I have a special guest with me from Ku-ring-gai Council, Alex. Alex, welcome to my YouTube channel and the Daily Raps episode 117. Thanks for coming today. Alex, what got you involved in the beehive and the Ku-ring-gai Council?
Well, I suppose I've always enjoyed the natural world, and I always had a little bit of fascination with bees. And I grew up in England, and obviously we have bees there, different type. But I did my studies at university on bees, and I got my doctorate in the ecology of bees generally. And so I moved out to Australia in August last year, and there was a job available at Ku-ring-gai Council working with bees, and it seemed like it just clicked with me, and that's how I got involved in council, and I've been doing it ever since.
So Alex, like I was saying in my commentary before, being careful about not going too close. What can happen if anyone gets too close to the beehive and there are bees around? What can happen?
Well, with the particular species that you have here, which is Tetragonula carbonaria, it's a native stingless bee species. They are completely harmless, so they cannot sting. They physically don't have the ability to do so, and they're very, very docile. So even today, when we opened up the hive and we had a look inside, the bees were very, very calm. So if anyone does have one of these hives or knows of one or is near one, you don't have to be worried. You can approach it and have a look at the bees going about their day to day, and just respect them and let them and observe them and enjoy that observation. But they can't and they won't do you any harm.
Alex, how long does it take for the honey to get extracted from the hive?
Well, in terms of how long the honey takes for the bees to create, it can take a number of years to produce enough honey in a sort of capacity that we may want to be able to take a sample. But in terms of extracting it from a hive, it varies quite a lot. So down here in Sydney, with the bees being at the southern tip of their range, it's slightly cooler, especially during the winter months. And so because they're not active as long, they don't produce as much honey. So it only takes a few minutes to sample the honey, but it's very small amounts. And I tend to advise that feel free if you do split a hive and there's a little bit of spilt honey to have a taste, but leave the bees their honey because they need it a lot more than we do.
So where were you before you joined Ku-ring-gai Chase?
So I was living in England, in Yorkshire, and I was studying for my PhD in bee ecology and nutrition. So I studied mainly solitary species of bee, and shortly after I finished, my wife and I moved here to Australia, and the first job that I started in was this job at Ku-ring-gai Council.
So what else do you do at the Ku-ring-gai Council? What other jobs do you do with the council?
So the native bee program at Ku-ring-gai Council is one of our most popular programs, and I do work significantly on that. But I also work we have a program that converts unused swimming pools to ponds for residents. We've got a number of residents in Ku-ring-gai that have done so, and they don't want to use their swimming pool for swimming anymore, and they don't want to pay the expensive upkeep costs of the chemicals and the heating and the filters. So they essentially get in touch with us, and we help them convert that swimming pool into a pond, and it becomes a beautiful naturalistic pond in their backyard. And then I also do work with other solitary species of bees, so perhaps less known species. So we do work with things like bee hotels, and also we do a lot of work with native planting as well.
So with the summer season up on us now, Alex, what advice would you like to give to people working out with the beehives.
So if you've got your own beehive, or you know of a beehive near you, or you work with them, one of the biggest dangers we're starting to see now with in the summertime is we're getting a lot more extreme temperatures. So we're getting a lot more days over 40 degrees than we used to historically. And sometimes if the hive is in a place where they're exposed quite heavily to the sun, they can really struggle with temperatures over 40 degrees. So if anybody out there has a hive, or they perhaps have a friend who has a hive, I would advise them that if they have got days coming up that are very, very hot, that they can provide some extra shade for their hive and keep it cool that way.
So like for the viewers at home watching this, what advice do you have for them if it's a really hot day, and what do you do with the hive, and how do you protect the bees from the sun?
So the first thing you can try, and the easiest, is to provide some extra shade. So you can do that with anything temporary, really, anything that's just going to keep that afternoon sun off the hive. You can also use a damp towel that you can drape over the hive. So what you can do is you can take a towel, you can wet it, wring it so that it's not sopping wet, just so it's damp, and then you can drape that towel over the hive, making sure that the entrance is still clear and open. And then you can leave the end of the towel in a small bucket of water, and that dampness will just help, the evaporation from the towel will help keep the hive cool. The other alternative you can do is, if we are having a very, very hot day, it normally only lasts 1 or 2 days. If you're really, really worried, then the night before the hot day is due, you can seal your hive up with some masking tape, so seal the entrance up, and you can put it inside somewhere cool, like a garage or a shed, just for that hot day. And then once the hot day has passed, you can take it back to where it originally was, put it in place, and reopen it, and the bees will come out.
Well, Alex, thanks for coming today. Is there any information we can get about purchasing beehives for anyone who lives in accommodation services?
So I would advise, obviously we at Ku-ring-gai Council do sell some hives each year. We currently haven't got any stock, we've just sold out, but you can always get in touch with us and register your interest. You can also look at, there's a website that's called aussiebee.com.au. It's a fantastic site for all things bee related in Australia, and they have a list of suppliers there that can provide stingless beehives, so you can always get in touch with some of those too.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the Absy Nights today, Alex, and thanks for coming. And like I said earlier, be really careful, even though they are stingless. And for those of you watching at home, wear protective gear if you are handling a beehive. And that's where I'd like to close the show by saying, be careful, have fun extracting your honey, okay? And have some paper towels to wipe up any spillage, okay? And a mopping bucket. And Alex, thanks once again for coming out to see us and seeing times today.
Absolute pleasure. I'm happy to do it again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the time is 12:10. That's the end of the show. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Thank you, Alex, and good afternoon, viewers.